Hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Loose Transistor channel. We're back here in the channel today to do another one of my Get Good series where I bring you guys a little bit of information and education on how maybe you can set yourself up to fly or how you can do some new sort of technique. This time I'm going to talk about how I fly from inside the car. So since I've been posting videos this winter and talking about common filters and all that other stuff, I've been getting a lot of questions about how I'm flying from inside of my car, what am I doing? And I'm going to let you guys know that it's nothing all that special, but I will walk you through my setup and the gear that I'm using and why I'm not wearing any antennas on my goggles. So basically we'll start off with the radio here, one sec. So I am flying from inside the radio using a Tyrannus right now, and it is entirely bone stock. There is nothing special about the radio that I'm using. It's just like that, no mods, nothing. I don't even have the SMA on it, and I'm not using Crossfire. I'm just flying with the radio. Two reasons for that. One, I don't have Crossfire, and two, I don't really feel like modding the radio, but also it's not really needed. You can fly quite a bit. I get pretty decent range with the radio, and since I only fly in the car because it's too cold to be outside, I don't really want to walk that far when I crash my drum. So I'm going to fly with something that's going to keep my range somewhat limited so that if I do crash, I don't have to walk all that far and freeze my ass off. So stock Tyrannus, it's good to go to fly from inside the car. The only thing I do is tilt the antenna up a little bit like that, just tilt it up. And I try to make sure that I never really bring the quad down too close to the engine block, because the engine block is a pretty big piece of metal and it will reduce your gain as you're going through it. So sometimes you can get some breakup. I haven't really had any problems yet, but if you're like really right under the engine, sometimes you have problems arming and stuff like that, or the quad can fail safe. So that's just something to be aware of, and you also have to be aware that the further you fly from your car, if you go behind objects, you're going to drop even more. So if you're flying from inside the car without some sort of external antenna booster or Crossfire, be very cognizant of what kind of objects you're going behind and how big or dense they seem to be, because otherwise you will probably fail safe. Another option that I've used in the past is this little guy right here. Has some weird thing here. So what it is just a TP-Link range extender thing where you can take an antenna like this and you can just screw it on, and you can mount this thing to the roof of your car, and if you have a modded radio with a RPSMA, you can just connect this to your radio, and now you have a nice antenna on top of you, which will give you a lot of range, like better range than your radio typically does, especially because the gain on this dipole is much greater as well. But you do get a little bit of loss on this, but I think it's more than made up by the gain on the antenna, and you will get a lot of range with this. Probably enough to outshoot your video in most instances, especially if you're using just your standard module inside the car. You can fly with your standard module inside the car. It is okay. You will get a reduced range, but again, if it's really, really cold out there, do you really want to fly that far? I don't know. It's up to you. So now we'll talk a little bit about the video setup. So here, I'll show you guys what I usually take with me. This giant case right here, it's all branded. It's pretty cool. So here's what we have inside of it. Alrighty, so we have a spare set of goggles here, usually for passenger or something like that. We have a clear view. So this is actually where the magic happens, the clear view unit. Now, I'm just using mine with two Pagoda antennas. You can also use patch antennas if you want. There's all sorts of different combinations of antennas. That's why I have a bunch of them in here. Depending on the place I'm gonna fly or how far I think I'm gonna fly, I will change the antennas. But most of the time when flying inside of the car, I choose to use the Pagodas because they are very solid omnidirectional antennas, give you very, very good coverage. And again, since I'm flying all around the car, I want to have a very even coverage all around so that my range isn't too much in one direction. It doesn't really help me when I'm flying like that. So the clear view here is where the magic really happens. There's nothing special about the clear view receivers themselves. I'm pretty sure they're just a standard 5808. But what is really magical about this little thing here is the software and the hardware that goes between stitching those two images together. So it gives you the best of both images and tries to give you the clearest picture, and it does. So it doesn't mean that it actually gives you better range. What it does is it gives you better ability to see at the edges of range. Only when you're really, really far and your signal is really, really low will you start actually seeing just pure snow. There's no actual breakup, lines going through, flickering, none of that. So it's much easier for you to fly in those sorts of conditions. Flying behind objects is no problem at all, for the most part, at least. And I would highly recommend getting yourself a set of the Clearview Race at the very least. These are very, very solid. They do have a goggle module coming out very soon, which you'll be able to put directly on your goggles from what I heard. And from what they've been saying, the performance is going to be the same as these guys. In my case in the car, what I do is I mount it to this tripod thing right here, which is just like a gorilla pod you're used to seeing for cameras. So super useful, and I just open this thing up entirely and place it on my dashboard so that the antennas are just like a little bit ahead like this, and they sit towards the glass, so I feel like they have a little bit less encumbrance from the rest of the metal body of the car. So that's one way to do it. Sometimes you can actually, if it's not raining or anything like that, you can mount these to the roof, which I've done before, and then you just have your patch for the goggles coming down and entering your goggles from the window or something like that, and it's no problem. On my Clearview here, you see this weird cable right here, and it's kind of come unglued here, unfortunately, as you can see. This here is just basically a pololo. There's a pololo in here in this little black thing, and a barrel connector, and then I have right here is actually a voltage readout, and we have an XT60 right here. So I can run this thing on up to 5 or 6S, I believe, and it will feed it only just enough for what it needs to run. So I'm not actually using the VRAG on the Clearview, I'm just using this as the VRAG, and it's been working quite great for me. It's pretty flexible, and I just need to find a better case for it. And this here is just stuck with that nice 3M HMD tape. Works really well, doesn't go anywhere. I've even dropped this thing once. There's a little bit of scarring on it, and it's good to go. So it's been very, very solid for me so far. Alright guys, so there you have it. There's nothing really that special about my car flying setup. It's just a standard Taranis radio, and I'm using a Clearview. The Clearview just gives me the best picture for the range that I'm able to fly. It doesn't actually increase my range or anything like that. There are other options for that. You can mount it on the roof, then you get a lot more range, but you're probably going to overshoot your radio in some situations. The whole thing with flying from the car is just about being smart and thinking about how far you're going to fly, if you're going to go behind any objects, and always remember that when you turn your quad around towards you, there's always a potential that you might fail safe because your quad's body might block the antenna. So your antenna placement on the quad is very important, making sure that you're not flying behind too many objects when you're already inside a metal case yourself. Try to keep the engine block from ever coming between you and the quad would be a good plan for most situations. In my case, most of my quads, I'd say 99% of them, have antennas mounted in this fashion right here, where they're just going out straight like that. So when they're flying like this, you can see they're like that. So the weakest point of the antenna is pretty much pointing to the ground. It seems to work really well for me. It's not necessarily the setup that's going to give you the maximum range, but it does give me the ability to flip-flop around, do all sorts of maneuvers, fly behind most objects, and still get signal without fail-safing. Alright guys, so that's all I really want to tell you guys about my car flying setup. If you have any questions, drop me a comment down on the comment fields on YouTube, and I will do my best to answer it and give you guys some more information. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys next time. Transistor.